Okay, so today we're talking to Kathe Morton from RVMS. Kathe, nice to speak to you. And
nice to talk to you as well, Kevin. Yeah, I am I'm a manager at RV Management Services, and we own 9 resorts throughout the United States. We have 5 on the East Coast and 4 on the West Coast. And we implemented Res Expert in 2012. At the time, we only had 5 resorts, and we've grown since then. And I programmed and train all of the staff at all 9 resorts and programmed all those systems, and am in charge of, all rate setting, etc. And so that's me.
Oh, great. So you've been with the company since 2012, or were you with RVMS before then?
Before that, no, I've been with RVMS since 2011. That's when we purchased the resort in Palm Springs, where I am in the wintertime now.
Okay. So if all the resorts are across the US and you're basically overseeing the management of that, how stressful is that?
It has its moments, but what the great part about it is that I can be wherever I am, because in the summertime I go to the East Coast to be at a resort there in the East Coast, and then in the summer or in the winter I'm on the West Coast. And it's great that I can still do what I need to do in terms of changing rates, adding new unit types, whatever things I need to do in terms of the system, that I can do it from wherever I am.
Oh, so you don't have to travel to the resort. You can just use your reservation software just to basically log in from anywhere.
Yep, I log in from anywhere, and because we are a network and we're handled as a network by Res Expert, I have one login and I can access all 9 at one time.
Oh, wow. So that must be easy for you to see if anybody's changed any rates, and just to make sure rates are all at what they should be across the network, because obviously that increases revenue, or at least maintains revenue.
Yep, that has been our big push this year, is to really, to manage our rate plans better, to have better rate plans that kind of mirror our business and occupancy, if you will. And then at some resorts we even take it one step further and manage by occupancy. So it's really been quite a challenge, and been really, really fun to learn the new ways I can do that, and be able to implement that across the network.
Wow, interesting you should say that, because obviously I'm the managing director for Digital Res, who produce the Res Expert system. And I do speak to a number of campgrounds and RV resort owners, and they typically ask how they can improve revenue. So as a manager of overseeing 9 resorts, you're ideally placed to give us some tips and tricks, and I can probably help you see what else Res Expert can do to help you achieve that.
Well, I mean, obviously, generally, the easiest way to create more revenue is to create more sites, right? If you're full or running at a very high occupancy and you want to add more revenue, you add more sites. That's not always possible. At some of our resorts, we've been able to do that. At others, we're landlocked and we don't have any room to do that. So then what do you do? Then what you can do as another option, and what we've done at several of our resorts, is you can enhance some sites, select some group of them that are either that you can differentiate in some way. If you've been at your resort long enough, or your RV park long enough, you know which sites people like and they don't. You know which ones they gravitate toward. So rather than have everything be the same, just it's an RV site, have some be a deluxe site or some be a premium site, because they're closer to the amenities, they're closer to the pool, they have shade, they're a pull through, because those are always more desirable, or you've enhanced them in some way. For example, at our resort in Palm Springs, we have the way the site's configured is they have a concrete pad for the RV and a concrete pad for their car. Well, what we did is we added some concrete between those two pads so that they could have a patio. And we call those a deluxe patio site, which get $10 more per night than other sites. So that's a way to increase your revenue and, without really doing much work. But you can, and now, of course, those are the most popular sites because when someone books online, they see, deluxe patio and they think that's the best site, and that's the one that very often online will get booked, which is my, highest revenue site that I have. And it's just little things like that. At another resort we did, that has a patio area, we actually put some short fencing around it, some decorative fencing around it, and we call that one a patio site. And, people love those sites, and those are the ones that they want. So it's just little things like that that you can do to change your site types, differentiate your site types, that can really drive your revenue, especially, if you're in a landlocked situation and you don't have the ability to add new sites, or you just don't have the money to add new sites, because obviously that kind of infrastructure can cost money.
Yeah, that's some great tips. Before you decide what to do to the sites, do you sort of look to see which sites are selling the most and which are selling the worst, and how do you do that typically?
Yes, we've done that at several locations. And the thing that's great is ResExpert just really gives us the ability to hone in on that, where we can actually look at the unit type level for each individual site for a given period of time. So for example, we have a resort in Pennsylvania. It's in the mountains. It's very woodsy. So it's summertime. It's big time. They're full every weekend. Actually, this year, they moved to 100% deposit policy. So when you make the reservation, you have to pay 100% of your stay when you make the reservation. And the reason they could do that is because they're so extraordinarily popular. So because they were so full on the weekends, she was looking at how can I increase my revenue, because they weren't going to add any more sites. So what they did is they looked at the unit revenue information over the whole summer period to see which RV sites brought in the least possible revenue, and then looked at those sites and said, how can I do something to those sites to get more revenue? So what we decided to do at that resort is to add a cottage, what some people would call a park model or a cabin, to those sites, and actually tripled and quadrupled the revenue on those specific units just by adding the cottage. And at other locations, we've also looked at the specific revenue. At my location where I added the deluxe patio sites to see which ones sell last, which are the ones that people don't want. And those are the ones that we make the enhancements to because they're the least popular, and now then they become the most popular. So it's really great to be able to look at your resort at that granular level by site, to be able to see, okay, sometimes you just intuitively know, but it's really nice to have the backup to say, this site is just a loser and we need to do something to make it a winner. And how do we make it a winner? And it can be as simple as, adding a little fence, adding, a little chimenea, those little ceramic chimney things, adding a decorative fire pit as opposed to a regular one. It can just be something real simple. But being able to identify those losers is real simple.
Well, that's some really good tips, because I'm sure there's a lot of listeners that want to know how to affordably raise revenue without, like you say, having to spend a large amount of capital expenditure to build more sites or cottages. Have you come across a situation where you've had to change from sites to cottages? Because I know that the demographic is getting older and they still want the camping experience but don't want to pitch a tent or necessarily driving an RV. Have you come across that in any of the resorts?
Oh yeah, definitely. We've been systematically at most of our resorts adding cottages as time has gone on, because two things. One, people like to who used to RV, they still like to come and, be in the RV experience, but they don't RV anymore. And that's kind of on our West Coast resorts, that's kind of the aging demographic. And on our East Coast resorts, which are a little more family oriented in terms of, more weekend traffic, kids and families, we've been adding cottages to those resorts because the families RV, but the grandparents don't. But they all want to come together for a family vacation, so we're able to offer the family an RV site and a cottage and a site next door or right down the road or across the street. So this year, actually, at one of our resorts, we're trying the cottage buddy system, where there's an RV site and then right next to it is a cottage, so that you can have the family grandparent experience. And sometimes it's the grandparents who have the RV and the family who don't. But to see, and we decided to try that because last year we got a lot of requests for that. Well, my parents are here and we'd really like them to be right next door. So we're going to give that a try this summer and see how that works for, our families that like to travel together. As well as there's a lot of families where, they like to travel together. One has an RV, one doesn't. So it gives them that opportunity to still be able to come to the same location, have a great family vacation, and be with the people they like to be with without everyone having to have the RV or trailer.
Some more great tips. Now, when it comes to managing yield or managing revenue rates and things like that, I know that we have a number of things in Res Expert, but how do you manage it currently, and are you looking for a better way to manage it?
So what we each have at our resorts is we have a rate plan, right, which everybody has. That's basically what rates you're going to charge when. Do you just have fluctuations based on season, when you're busier, when you're slower? Do you have fluctuations based on whether it's weekday, weekend? And we have across all 9 resorts, we have a combination of all of those different things. So that's where we start with the basic rate plan. Your whatever you're going to charge, when you're going to charge based on special events, when you're going to be more full, what your traffic looks like. So we start there. Then from there, at a couple resorts, we have now implemented what we're calling rate management, which can also be called in the hotel industry yield management. And basically what that means is now we take our rate plan and we kind of escalate it, because now we not only manage, then we take the rate plan and we increase rates based on occupancy. Like, how full are you? So what it leads you to is not charging the same price for the first 10 sites as you do for the last 10 sites, right? It's no different than a hotel room. If you walked in and, paid for the first room because you made your reservation 5 months ago and then walked in and you wanted to stay tonight, chances are you guys didn't pay the same rate. And the same with an airplane. You're never going to pay for the same price for the last seat on the plane as you did for the first seat on the plane. So we're taking the approach that we shouldn't be any different. And what I've done currently is at my resort in Palm Springs is I have rate increases at all levels for all sites at a 40, because we're seasonal here. I'll explain a little bit in Palm Springs. We're very winter seasonal, right? People want to come here in the winter because it's beautiful here. The weather's warm. It's in the desert. It's an amazing place to be in the wintertime. So we have a very short, very intense, very full season between mid-December and mid-March, because that's when it's really cold in the north and they all want to be where it's warm. So during that time, I rate manage very, very intensely. So when I start making reservations for that seasonal time, once I get to 40%, I increase the rate. Then when I get to 60, I increase the rate. When I get to 75, I increase the rate. When I get to 85, I increase the rate. So I have a 5-tier plan that basically, because the whole idea is to raise my average daily rate. That's really the goal. That's my job as a resort manager, as a rate manager, is to raise my average daily rate. And I had an experience in 2016 where my busiest month, which is February, I didn't my income, my revenue that I generated was not better than the year before. And I thought, why is that? I was 7% more full, but I had 7% more occupancy, yet my revenue didn't match the year before. So I was a little perplexed. So using the tools in ResExpert for looking at my revenue, I was able to see what I did is I charged too many people the low rate for being here for a month, which drove my average price, my average daily rate down. So that's when I said, okay, that's never going to happen again. And so after that season, we implemented this rate management idea. So when I book up to a certain point, then the rates increase. And this year, I'm happy to report that in 2017, our February was 17% higher in revenue than over last year, which was really awesome, and it works really, really well.
Well, I've got some great news for you. I've just pulled up one of our test sites because we've recently implemented automated yield management. As you can see, in your current live system, you don't have the module switched on, but if you had the module switched on, this is what it would look like. And now you can create a rate plan, and you can say whatever occupancy level, let's say this one's set for 50%, there's no discount at all. And then at 100%, you'll have 10% on, but it wouldn't really be 100%, it'd be more like 80%. I got another one here. 80%, there's no discount. At 40%, this one's test at minus 25%, so you're going to get 25% discount. But at 80%, you could say a surcharge. You wouldn't put a minus in front, you would just put 10%. And so just like a hotel system, it will manage your yield. Now, what people have to understand about yield management is you need to have a daily rate, because the yield is based on the percentage of occupancy per day. So if you have a 1 month lump sum stuck at the beginning of the reservation saying this is my monthly rate, and it's some made up figure that can't be divided between 28, 29, 30 or 31, which is the amount of days in a month, well then it's impossible to work out the yield for that, because the occupancy will change every day. So what you have to do, and what you can do in ResExpert obviously, is utilize the daily rate, and then you sit back and it manages itself. We have another resort network of, I believe it's 9, I won't mention the name, but they've just implemented it, and it's interesting to see what's happening there. But I know that they will increase the revenue without a doubt. The software will actually end up paying for itself when things of this nature are used. So it's interesting that you are implementing that, and because you have a test system, you can go in and test it before you implement it just to see how it goes.
Yeah, and I'm really excited to be able to do that, because right now I'm managing it manually, which you can also choose to do. It just obviously takes a lot more of my personal time and energy, because then I have to monitor, I have to go look at the occupancy statistics to say, okay, for this period of time, how full am I? Is it time to raise the rate? Then actually go into the rate setup, make changes in the rates, make sure I did it right, that I didn't mess anything up. And so, that and then sometimes I've missed it. It's like, oh, okay, well, I'm only at 35%. I'm not going to raise it yet. And then all these reservations happen, and then I'm at 45, and I missed my 40% window, right? I went over it. So it's going to be great to be able to program that so that the system will just do it on its own, and I don't really have to be involved. Now, one of the challenges that we came across, and that some of our guests pointed out to us, is when you give them a rate sheet, they want to see a rate sheet, right? They want to see what are the rates. And we had to go to giving them a range of rates, right? The rate can be from this to this, as opposed to it's $100. And it takes them a little adjusting to get used to, but if you look out in the world, that's kind of how it is out in the world. Until you give me a specific date that you want and a specific time that you want, I really can't, on a specific day, I can't tell you what the rate's going to be. And if it's just like in general, how much are the rates? Well, it can be between this and this based on when you make your reservation and how soon you make your reservation. That's pretty much what we tell them. And that's been a little bit of an education process for our guests, but they are all definitely used to it. And now, let me tell you, they scramble to get their sites first. For example, in March, so it just ended up being March of 2017, we are already 85% booked for February of 2018.
Wow, and that's great, because I'm assuming that you have a deposit policy, correct?
Absolutely.
Well, then that means that your cash flow just improved dramatically.
Yes, it did. Yes, it did. Especially if they're going to stay here long term, we have a fairly significant deposit for them, so that that can be helpful. And then we've also implemented another thing that can be a revenue generator, depending on your traffic and how it works for you. If you're a resort that has kind of a seasonal feel to it, so you have people who are there more in the summer or more in the winter, and they stay longer term, maybe 2 to 3 months or 4 months, somewhere in that range. If that happens to be your business pattern, then like we do at several of our resorts that have that for both summer and winter, what we're able to offer them is we're able to offer them prepaid discounts, so that if they prepay the entire lease, they get a certain amount of discount, anywhere from 6 to 10%, depending on when the prepay is. And what that does for us is, because normally that revenue would come in the wintertime, which is great because that's when my revenue's high. But then in the summer, when no one's here in Palm Springs because it's 110 degrees, I do my prepaid discount in August, when my revenue is really tanking because there's nobody here. And August ends up being one of my bigger months because all those people who are coming in the wintertime want to prepay. We do the same thing with our resort in Pennsylvania that does seasonal sites in the summer. They have their prepay in December when their revenue is starting to dwindle off. So that also can be, if you're seasonal and trying to figure out how do I balance my revenue over the year, that can also be an opportunity for you to create some revenue in the down months from the people who are coming during the busy months.
Now that is some good planning, really good. Now let's talk about online bookings. Now I know that in the industry still there's some resorts that are hesitant on utilizing online bookings. Do you guys utilize online bookings?
Oh my gosh, online bookings save our life. We did actually track at our resort in Pennsylvania when we implemented online reservations. And to go even further than online reservations, they actually we have 2 resorts that implement the map interface in ResExpert, which means the guest, when they go online, they can actually pick the site location they want to go to and find out when that site location is available and then make their reservation for that exact one, which for that resort works really well. For my resort in Palm Springs, that wouldn't work really well, so we don't use that, but we use more of the optimization features in ResExpert, but we can talk about that some other time. Anyway, back to online. We all of our resorts use online, and one of the things now that's really been helpful is because when using the online feature, obviously there's a small fee for that, but we found that it's so minimal in comparison to what we save. Because at Twin Grove, when we did implement the online reservation system, we found that we could actually cut 1.5 staff because the phones weren't as busy. Wow. People didn't have to call anymore because they could now go online and they could book their exact site as opposed to having to call because they had to have that one, and they weren't going to make a reservation unless they could have that exact one. Once we put that map up there for them to be able to choose their locations, the phones dropped off, and we were able to save staffing costs, which has been really, really, really good. And that's been true at all of our resorts. That as we've gotten on, and that we've been able to decrease our phone volume based on that, which is good. And it's making money when you're asleep, essentially. I mean, it's really great. We have special events here in Palm Springs, and when there's a special event and the special event is announced, I'll wake up the next day and look at my online reservations, and overnight there were my resort's 265 sites, and there were 85 reservations overnight, and I didn't have to do anything. Nobody had to answer the phone, nobody had to talk to anybody, nobody had to do anything. They just went on, did it, and it's done.